I'm excited about today's podcast. I think we're going to learn a little bit about real estate, making some money, and retiring early. So, without further ado, we've got our friend Matt Krueger on. He's going to introduce himself, tell us a little bit about his background, and get us started in his journey. So, Matt, how's it going, man?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. Huge privilege to join in. I've seen you guys interview some pretty big names, so it is a huge privilege for me to be here from small town Iowa, guys. But yeah, so I mean, a little bit of background about me. Nothing too exciting. I grew up in Iowa, born in Wisconsin, but lived here all my life. So this is where I'm from. I did not grow up in a wealthy family. We never inherited parents' money, anything like that to get started on our journey. We learned, both my wife and I, about working hard and really putting in that work and dedicating yourself to get to where you want to be. So my wife grew up in a family that her dad was a meat cutter. They were entrepreneurs, though. They actually owned ostriches. They did an ostrich farm. They tried to get on that trend, and it didn't work out for them, but they picked themselves back up, and they do some house flipping and stuff now too. So that's kind of what encouraged us to start. But I went to school to be a paramedic at first. That was my initial goal. I wanted to help people. So it was just kind of my first grab at it. But I started as a senior in high school, and I think I was just a little bit too young, a little too much for me at the time. So instead of saving lives, I decided to go to school to save souls. So I actually got a degree as a youth pastor, and graduated, and found out pretty quickly after college that it's hard to find a good paying job as a youth pastor, even though I loved it. And my youth pastor played a good role in my life growing up. I found myself needing to find a job. So I got a job at a local Sprint store, slinging cell phones. That was really my first interaction with customer service type of stuff in sales. And I learned how to sell. I could relate to people well and empathize. And that's kind of what really kicked off my sales journey. I was not making much of anything, but I loved it. When my wife and I met, and got married, I was making like 35 grand a year. This was, almost 9 years ago now. And, we got pregnant. We were living in an apartment, paying like $700 a month for rent for this little itty bitty dinky place, and not the best neighborhood, but we were getting by, and we loved our life. But we got pregnant, and at that point, it was like, what do I need to do to create generational wealth for my family, but also create a higher income for us, build passive income so I can actually be there for my family. I think this is something that definitely crosses every father's mind, at one point or another. Whatever they decide to do, that might be different, but everybody thinks about this. And we decided, it's like, we'd like to have a rental property. Like, what do we do to get a rental property? And I think that also crosses a lot of people's minds too, because you ask anybody, and oh yeah, I'd love to have a rental, but the reality of like how to get that, especially with where our income was difficult, right? So we did a lot of thinking and trying to figure out what we could do, and we realized pretty quickly that we were not going to be able to afford 20% down on a property for a very long time. So this is where, and I won't go through our whole story because I'm sure you guys will want to ask me questions. So maybe I'll just quickly summarize, and if you want to dig into this more, we can. But I learned about this method called house hacking, where I could essentially buy a property, move into the property, and then rent the property out. So a lot of people talk about doing this with multifamily, and it's always talked about like a duplex or a fourplex or whatever, rent out the other units. Well, what a lot of people don't understand is you can house hack with single family rentals as well. And that's what we did. We purchased a home that we bought for $90,000. Or it was for sale for 90, but I didn't even have closing cost money at this point. I had next to nothing. And what we did is we offered him 92 so that way he would pay closing costs. So I didn't have to come up with those out of the pocket. I could just get them looped into my loan. We got a first time home buyer credit of $1,000. Found a bank that was running a program. So out of pocket, 3% in, I mean, we were like $2,500 to get our first home. This was grandma's home. This was, orange shake carpet in the bedrooms, carpet in the kitchen, through the entire kitchen. There was some subfloor rotting out in some places, and wood paneled walls in every single room. And, but it was a house that we could buy. We ended up renovating the house as we lived there as we could. And then after 1 year, we moved out of that property, did the same thing into another house with 3% down, moved into that house, and then rented out the first one. We ended up doing this 5 times in 5 years to build up the beginning of our real estate portfolio. We never lived off of our cash flow until October of this last year when I officially quit my W-2 job. But throughout the last 8-9 years, we've grown to a portfolio of 12 properties. We have, a fourplex, a duplex, single family homes, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, pretty diverse now. But yeah, that's what really kickstarted us in the beginning. So I'm living proof that somebody, making lower income, median income, can still do it. Even today, you can still do it. You just got to be creative. So that's our story in a nutshell. So yeah.
One thing I kind of want to go back to is, we're not even going to discuss it because I just want to let you guys know it was on my mind. You said your parents missed the ostrich farm trend. Was that a trend? Is that something that I totally missed growing up? Like,
yeah. So you ever go to Fuddruckers? You have Fuddruckers where you live?
Yeah.
It used to be a thing. Okay, I think they're like a lot more closed now, but you used to be able to order an ostrich burger. This is like one of the places that I saw it, at least. But ostrich meat actually became a big commodity. It was a more elegant meat that people would consume. The higher class, I don't know, I wasn't part of it, but her parents bought like a breeding pair of ostriches for 40 grand. They were 20 grand each, and then had just all these ostriches. But it was like at the tail end of when this trend was going, so it ended up crashing and burning, and they ended up losing some money, and he had to get a second job running a paper route and stuff. But he worked so hard to try and do something. And I mean, I'm sure you guys have been there too, but everybody thinks it's like they like to see the end result, where you are now. People are like, oh yeah, must be nice. Like you just got these properties. Like I had to fail in some places before we, really, found that success, and you learn through that, and they did as well. So they just learned a little bit harder than some other people do, but by losing ostrich money, I guess. But
yeah, I mean,
they're going to go back and see.
Opposite of
Matt, why did you talk about this?
Yeah, it's the opposite of what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe like a petting zoo, not like, not like a chicken farm or something like that. I got you. Cool. Well, that's good context. And I think it's important for people to realize that, you got to kiss a few toads or, flop on a couple businesses. And, all the successful people we've talked to have had plenty of failures along the course of finding the success that they ultimately land on. So that's totally normal to be expected. Let's get into the house hacking a little bit. Were you doing this while you had children, or, was it just you and your wife, by yourselves?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. While we had kids. So one thing I learned is that each time you move, you accumulate more valuables. I was about to say junk, but treasures, precious treasures. The first move was super easy. The second move was a little harder. The third move was rough, and the fourth move was just, we don't want to do this anymore. So we finally bought the house that I'm actually in now, which is a small acreage out here, and it wasn't the house that we wanted to live in for forever necessarily when we bought it, but we've done a lot of renovations as we lived here. But yeah, I mean, one thing that we've definitely done that I feel like a lot of families wouldn't even consider doing is living in construction. And, it's hard. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. It's not like every home we had massive construction jobs. It was, mostly homes that needed some, pretty extensive cosmetic stuff, carpet, paint, countertops, flooring, backsplashes, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, we did that as we had kids. So house number 1, we had our first kid in. House number 2, we had our second kid. House number 4, we had our third kid, and we just had baby number 4. So, but yeah, we've done this. I mean, and even as we've lived where we live now, the last, half a dozen properties or so we purchased as a family. That was one thing we committed to at the start of this was we were not going to make this happen unless we could make it happen as a family. It wasn't going to be something where like I would work 40 hours a week at my regular job, and then I would get off and then go work on this property by myself or be there over the weekend. It was, we're going to go together, which is super challenging, you know, when you have kids getting into paint or, you know, your electrical stuff or whatever else. But you make it work, and you might go slower, but it's worth the battle to do it together. So, yeah.
That's really good. I mean, I think that's awesome, you know, and to also have your spouse on board from the beginning and talk about the plan and move forward with it. I think that's really important too, because a lot of people are always struggling to get one half on board to make a whole. So I think that's really important that you guys were able to knock that out from the beginning. Now, with doing the house hacking, you know, were you buying these properties that needed a little bit of work, renovating them throughout that year, refinancing out of the FHA, you know, into conventional financing, and then going and doing another FHA loan? Like, let's break that down a little bit for listeners that are thinking about wrapping their mind around this.
Yeah. So first and foremost, and a lot of people assume that we did FHA loans. And, you know, I think that's a fair assumption. We actually have never utilized an FHA. I looked into it, and, you know, for a lot of people maybe watching this that don't understand the difference as well, you know, like with an FHA, just to like briefly like summarize like why we chose conventional instead, is that FHA was more restrictive on their inspection process, which you guys know too. So it's like, it was, when we're buying these distressed properties now, I'm sure, you know, probably most of them, maybe there was a few that probably wouldn't, but would have passed and been okay because it was just old. But like, you know, FHA loan is more restrictive on what they'll let you buy. It can't be, you know, needing crazy updates. So conventional loan was just easier for us to do. We maintain a halfway decent credit score as well. I mean, I think we started in the high 600s, which helped us as well, but very similar. But yeah, we just did conventional. But to answer your question, so we were able to, so on our first property, moving into the second property, because this question we get a lot too. So, because a lot of people wonder, well, you know, your DTI, right? Your debt to income ratio, you know, how do you get approved for the next house when you already have the first house? And the answer is having a signed lease. So when you have that signed lease, you offset your DTI. You know, just, I know you guys know this, but I'm just, you know, just explaining this for everybody else here too. But like, so, you know, it hurt our debt, right? Because we had the mortgage payment, but it also helped our income, the I of the DTI, by having a lease signed on that property. So we would essentially, you know, we're at the point where we're ready to go. We're ready to get this next property. We would find a renter. We really only had to do this, I think, once, maybe twice. We found somebody who could rent the property before we were even like closed on the next property. Where we put the place up for rent, we find a renter, we explain, you know, that's contingent upon us, you know, closing on this next deal, which they understand as well. Get the lease signed, and then I present that lease to my lender, which they present to the underwriter. The underwriter can see, okay, they've got a lease on this property already anyway. This is income coming in, so that offsets my DTI, so that way I can get approved for the next loan as well. So does that make sense? Did I answer that question? Kind of a long-winded way of explaining it, but
No, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think because that's really the thing, is you're able to do those 3% or 5% conventional loans, and that is because you are the primary residence. So by moving out of your one property and going to find a new primary residence, you can get that 3 to 5% down on the next purchase. And then you just turn that previous one into a rental, like you're talking about, and you can do that over and over and over again. The biggest thing with the FHA, like you were saying before, not only does it have to have running water, heat, you know, a bathroom, a functioning kitchen, all of those things, but you have to refinance out of it into a conventional loan before you can go get another FHA loan. So that was a good move out there for going conventional from the get.
Yeah, because you can only have one FHA loan at a time, from my understanding, where you can have up to 10 conventional loans under one individual's name. I do know some individuals who have been able to kind of hack the system and have 10 on themselves and 10 on their, their spouse. I think we got up to a point, let's see, we've got 9 conventional loans right now. It gets really hard. If you guys know the process as well, you have to have reserve income or reserves, cash reserves, with conventional loans. So if you like getting that 9th one, that was rough, because at that point, I want to say we had to have, it was like $130,000 of reserves, because basically, the bank is requiring that you have 6 months worth of mortgage payments to cover each property that you have, including the property that you're buying. So I had to have 6 months worth of mortgage payments to cover 9 different properties. So it was like 130 grand. What we did, though, that helped with this is we used creative financing, because they actually count HELOC money as reserves as well. So I didn't necessarily had to save up $130,000, because I would have never gotten to that point, because we were just investing anyway. And I would have found another loan to use at that point. But we pulled out a HELOC for 150. So we had reserve money sitting there that was literally just the equity in our primary residence. So that helped us get that. But yeah, it gets harder. So we're now utilizing DSCR loans, which the rates are not as good, but there are some really competitive DSCR loans out there right now too for investors. So since I don't have my W-2, I kind of need to do something like that. So
yeah, well, let's get into that a little bit, because I think that's an aspect of financing that's not as well appreciated by a lot of people out there. So let's talk about DSCR loans. Who might use them, and what context they're super good for.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not a finance, lender guy necessarily, but just to give you, my overview on the pros and cons. Essentially, I'm not quite sure when DSCR loans came out, but from what I understand, they're relatively newer. They've not been out that long.
I think
DSCR
they've become super popular recently.
Yeah, they have. It's kind of the new commercial loan for investors, because instead of a 20-year, you can actually get 30-year on them, and you can get locked interest rates as well, which is super nice. But DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio loan. Essentially, it's a loan that does not require tax returns or W-2 income. So you don't have to have a job necessarily to qualify for the loan. They qualify you based off of the property value, and also the what it's going to bring in for rent as well. So when the appraiser comes through, he's not just looking at comps for what other properties have sold in the area. He's also looking at comps for what other properties rent for in the area. So, if you're buying a house and they can see through this appraisal that, hey, it's going to bring in such and such amount of money each month as well, that is what helps determine your approval for it. So, there is no 3% or 5% down payment on these. There are some random ones out there that'll do 10%, but pretty typical is 25% ARV. So that's your average resale value. So, or 75% ARV. So that means you have to put 25% down. So they require 25% down, but then they'll finance the rest over 30 years. Typically it's a fixed rate. I know right now I'm doing a cash out refinance on one. That's a rental. We bought it for 160 at the end of last year. We did the renovations on our own. We put about 25 into it. So all in, we were 185, and it just appraised for 300. So we're able to pull, I forget the percentage, but we're able to pull about $80,000 out of it. My interest rate is going from a 6.5% to an 8.125, which burns a little bit. But my total mortgage payment escrowed is going up $800 a month or so. But I'm getting $80,000 out of that. And I know, from personal history and success from what we've been able to do, that I can for sure, make far more than that, investing that money into a couple properties. So, but yeah, that's a DSCR loan. So it's designed for real estate investors specifically. They have some that are we specialize in short-term rentals specifically, or some that are just general real estate, loans. But yeah, so it's an alternative for a commercial loan.
Makes sense. Now, do you see yourself utilizing the DSCR loans, more in the future? Or do you see yourself maybe if and when rates come down, maybe doing a portfolio loan, combining some of those conventional loans together and then going after that? Like,
Yeah.
break that down a bit.
I mean, just from a personal perspective, like I think everybody's different, and depending on where they are in their real estate investing journey, this will completely change that, opinion. But for me personally, I don't think that I will ever do a portfolio loan because of the fact that I was able to refinance a lot of my properties back in 2021. So like my primary residence is locked in at 2.5. I've got 4 rentals locked in at 2.65, and I am going to die with those properties. So I will not, refinance those at any point. So, even to do a cash out refi. But I don't know, maybe my opinion will change in the future. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely see people, utilizing something different. But for a real estate investor who can't qualify for a conventional loan, I mean, I would always try and qualify for conventional first. I can't anymore. Then yes, a DSCR loan is, in my opinion, the way to go right now. So
makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense. Now let's go back a little bit and let's say, all right, so you did 3 single family quote unquote house hacks, and then let's jumpstart the journey from there. Like you said, you have a duplex, a fourplex. Like, let's talk about like the progression a little bit on how you kind of grew and what made you take that leap. Because I think that's a big thing for people, taking the leap from single family to small multi-family. Like, what was the deciding factor on that, and how did that kind of progression happen?
Yeah, it's interesting, like thinking back through our story and kind of where we decided to jump. It was one of those things. Like I think investing, in real estate and doing this stuff, it's a mindset thing. Like I mean, and it's that way with anything in life that you do. But working in sales for 9-10 years, always metriced on all sorts of things, and having goals and things, it's kind of brought into that with me. But like our mindset was not at the start of this to be able to retire early. That's never like what we started at. It was just, how can we generate passive incomes that way? If I were to get fired, that we have something to help get us by. Or that in 30 years, we'll have a couple houses paid off. That's kind of what our first thought was. So, we moved 5 times in 5 years, and we did this, house hacking thing. We sold the first property because it was pretty old and run down, and we did a for sale by owner and walked away making like 45 grand on the sale. I didn't even know what a 1031 exchange was at that point, so I didn't do that, and I paid capital gains on it. But thankfully it was long term because we owned it for a couple of years when I did that. But we were carrying, what was it, 3 rental properties for a while, and I didn't grow for a while. We bought our first one in 2015, and I want to say from like 2019 to 2021, we didn't really do much of anything. We lived on these 3 properties. We had really good cash flow. They've appreciated pretty significantly. So our cash flow is like 800 to 850 off of each one. They're all long-term still right now, but we just kind of stood still. What we ended up doing was number one, it was more of just like now what do we do? Because we didn't want to move. It's like, do we save up to 20%? I didn't really have the knowledge that I have now. If I had it at that point, I would have probably changed what we had done. But what we decided to do instead was let's use the cash flow from these properties to increase the value of our primary residence. And then let's pull out a HELOC later on and use that HELOC to invest in more rentals. So that's kind of what we did. When we moved into the house that we're in now, it was just super old and outdated, but it was, on a plot of land that we wanted, where we have a decent acreage out here and, can do our own thing, and we're pretty close to town still. But we ended up doing some pretty major renovations here. I built a pole barn. We like a 3-car detached garage. I converted our attached garage into part of the home. I actually knocked out the wall that connected it to the like kitchen, galley kitchen, and dining room, living room. Knocked out a few walls, completely gutted the entire kitchen, area, redid all of that stuff. So over the course of a couple of years, I would say we put 50,000, 60,000 into this house. We bought it for 180, and we put that into there mostly just from cash flow from these properties coming in. We did that slowly over the course of a couple of years. Then we pulled out a HELOC, and I think that's kind of when things really started spiking back up again, because we pulled out this HELOC. Our house appraised for 375. We got a HELOC for 150, and then we started jumping back into stuff. So we got on a deal, and I'll be short with this, but we wanted to do we want to start Airbnb. So I had been talking with a couple guys and listening to people like Michael Elefante. I keep talking about him on a lot of different things. So I'm sure he's going to be like, why does this guy keep bringing up my name? But he's like my role model, golden child from starting into short-term rentals. So I got to tell him that in person when I saw him in March at a conference. But so I mean, we kind of sat on short-term rentals for a while, but we decided to get into it. We bought a short-term rental downtown Des Moines, Iowa, because that's close to where we live, just to try it out. It was very successful. So then we decided, let's buy one, a place that we like to vacation. So we actually bought one down in southern Texas, South Padre Island, and ended up flipping it instead because the market got really hot. Our financing kind of changed, and we made a little over 100K on a flip down there. People call it luck. I don't. I created a relationship with a property manager down there as we were vacationing there for a month, and he gave me an inside scoop on an owner that was selling, and we got in and put in the work. Lived down there for a month last March. Flipped that property. So, but yeah, kind of used that, and I don't know. We hit this point where it's like we had a decent amount of capital from the HELOC, and then from the flip that we had done, and it's like, what can I do to really get a better return on my investment? And I'd always been intimidated by like apartment complexes, but it's kind of always, I think any investor that does real estate investing, it's like, would you like to own an apartment complex? If I think they're going to say yes. They're just like, yeah, it's impossible for me to do. Ours isn't anything special. We bought it in small town Iowa, like north west side of the state. It's a town of like 8,000 people. So it's nothing that exciting, but it was a duplex and then a fourplex right next to it, owned by the same guy, same investors, and like a 6-car garage between them. So 6 units up there. And they were a good price point. So we put 20% down from our profits in our HELOC and bought these things. And now we're actually a year and a half later, we've got them for sale. We've increased the rents by almost $1,000 combined. They were way under rented when we bought them, and we still don't even have it at market rent, but that's helped increase the value. So now we'll do a 1031 exchange into hopefully something bigger and better back down here. But I mean, I think for any investor, it's just a growing point, right? It's I think eventually if you put in the work and you keep growing, you'll get to that point. But it takes a little bit more capital and knowledge to do it. I wouldn't just say jump into a multifamily until you've really dipped your toes into some single family first. But because it's a whole nother ball game working with multi-unit stuff for sure than just a single family rental. But yeah, so now we're looking at maybe even buying some land and doing some crazy Airbnb unique stay deal. I've got some more money to play with now, so it's just you just keep growing and growing. It's the reverse Dave Ramsey snowball effect. I just keep building more debt, but I keep building equity through it too. So I've
started to see on Instagram a lot of people more or less bragging about the amount of debt that they have, and just throwing it in Dave Ramsey's face, which, by the way, I think is a great strategy because it works, especially in real estate. Leveraged real estate has been a great wealth builder for many people for a long period of time. And that doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. But, with regard to everything you've done so far, the short-term rentals, the live-in, house hack, live-in flip kind of rehab kind of situations, the small multifamilies, what's your favorite, man? Like, what's really tickling your interest here for future growth? Like, where are you taking your future real estate endeavors?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I get asked this a lot. Should I do long-term rentals? Should I do short-term rentals? I don't really have a great answer. For me personally, right now, I mean, we have 10 long-term rentals, and then we have 2 short-term rentals. And I love short-term rentals. I love the income that they can produce. So that's kind of what we've been more focused on lately. I think that people are saying the markets are getting oversaturated. I don't think so. I think that there's a lot of people that have just, like a couple years ago, it was a lot easier to make money through Airbnb and stuff, because not everybody was doing it at the time. And, everybody just started throwing up whatever houses with Facebook Marketplace, futons and stuff in it. And that's created a bad name for Airbnb in some aspects too, from so many crappy hosts out there. But Airbnb in general is doing a much better job of like cracking down on this and really like highlighting the higher level hosts that are offering the better guest experience, that have the better amenities, that have the better photos, all of that stuff. They're actually putting in the work to make this right. And that's what we do as well. So we're, focused on creating, high quality stays that are unique. So mine are all farm themed. And we have a fun time doing it. So, but we offer amenities that other people don't offer. And, like in Des Moines right now, like it's really not that great of a market, from just like, not to like diss some of the other investors here, but like for just your average to lower level, investor. But if you learn how to offer those top amenities, you can do well. I mean, like average occupancy for the market right now in the month of September was like 35%, and we're in the 70s right now. So like we're making good money doing it. I'm seeing like 4 to 8 times the cash flow off of my short-term rentals than my long-term. But again, there's pros and cons of both, right? Because the short-term rental, you have to furnish the whole thing and you have to keep up on that. And then you have guest communication and cleaner communication and all of this other stuff that goes into it. And it's more active income than passive. I would say long-term rentals, if you have a good tenant in place and a quality rental, they're 95% passive. I take the calls, I property manage myself, but I have a team of handyman, HVAC guy, carpet guy, plumber, all of that stuff. So I'll just, push it off to those guys to go deal with these problems. And I don't have to go to rentals. I will sometimes, if I'm in the area and I, want to, but with short-term rentals, it's more active. So it's a toss up, right? I spend 2 to 3 hours a week managing our short-term rentals. And I love doing it. I love the interaction with guests and the money that they can produce too. It's a lot more fun with our family. So my goal, to answer your question, I told you guys, I answer these like I'm like long-winded here, right? So to answer your question directly, I think having a diverse portfolio is important for anybody that's investing. I would not put all of your eggs in one basket. I know a lot of investors that just do short-term rentals or just do long-term rentals. Long-term is definitely the safer way to go. There's more risk in a short-term rental. You're not guaranteed, your rent check at the beginning of each month like you are with a long-term rental. But with the short-term, there's definitely a lot more cash flow reward. So with our 10 long-term right now, I think we're just going to kind of float those. We might sell some to get more into, like I mentioned, to get more into short-term, but we're looking to really start going bigger and offering some really cool, unique stay experiences for Airbnb that Iowa has never seen. So I won't share exactly what we're thinking about doing because I don't know for sure if it'll happen. So it's one of those things I got to convince my wife first. But
as long as it's not an ostrich farm, I've got some faith in you. So,
no,
but I do think that would be a good fit in Airbnb.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be cool, right? Like some unique farm stay where you can go pet an ostrich or ride an ostrich or something. I mean, there'd be some crazy liability stuff, and I'm sure insurance would be astronomical. But
yeah,
no, I think that's huge. So it sounds like to me that the goal moving forward is to continue on that short-term rental side.
Yep.
And you and your wife kind of have like an idea on how many more Airbnbs you would need or what sort of income you were trying to get to, because you've already quit your job. So like, what's that next level that you guys are trying to get to?
It's funny. We were actually talking about this yesterday. So once we really started to get back into investing again, which I would say, you know, we took a kind of a 2-year pause to just focus on increasing our home value. So a couple years ago now, this really started to become a reality, especially getting into the short-term rental space, which was January of 2022. January 2022 is when we opened our first short-term rental. That's when it actually became a reality that, hey, at that point, I was like, I could quit my job. At the time, I'm like in my mid 40s. And then just, I mean, the dominoes started to fall because we really saw this vision and we created these goals for ourselves. And it was like, once I can surpass my salary with our cash flow, then let's get a couple more houses on there to really give that cushion, and then I'll quit. Right. So, my salary increased over time with this, but I never really had a super high paying job. You guys talk about being open with numbers. Like my highest salary, which was the last one I ever had, I was getting $68K a year. I mean, I wasn't pulling in big bucks by any means. So, and I was account manager working with Google, not for Google, but working on the Google Pixel program, helping sell Google Pixel phones. And I loved the job, which is why I stayed there too, and was okay with it, and gave me flexibility to grow this on the side too. So, but as far as a number perspective, yeah, I mean, it was, once we passed that, so we got past that, and then we added a couple more houses on there. So we were pulling, I don't know, 100,000 a year or so in cash flow. And now we've grown even more since then too. And, from a gross income perspective, we did over 300K last year, which I never thought would be, possible, to get to that point. But, once I quit my job, I realized how much faster we could really, grow, because this is all we have now. It's let's really push to build onto this, and this only. So, but I don't know. I mean, we don't really have an end goal. I've never had the desire to be making millions of dollars a year. That's just not me. You'll never see me driving a Lamborghini unless, I get some sort of crazy good used car deal on it, which I don't think that's a thing. But, dude, I drive a 2011 Honda Pilot right now. So it's got 165,000 miles. I mean, but I love it. It gets me where I need to go. So, could I go out and lease some, fancy fun car? Probably. But, we like to continue to invest. So we live off of, I don't know, about a third of our income, half of our income, and then we just keep reinvesting the rest. And we enjoy giving and helping other people where we can too. And that's kind of been our goal, is to just, continue to do that and travel as a family and just not need to look back. So that's kind of our goal. But we don't want to stop buying houses because it gives us something to do and we enjoy it together. But yeah.
Yeah, my wife always say, I can't wait to retire. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I don't really want to retire. I want to keep doing the things I've been doing, having fun building the things I've been building. And what I've kind of discovered for myself is a lot of it is the journey that I enjoy. And a lot of people do put a unit count number of, dollars they want to have per month in revenue, whatever. My philosophy on that is kind of shifted towards wanting to spend time with family and just maximizing my time. Not necessarily the dollars. Of course, the dollars help you get there, but a lot of that comes with enjoying the day to day. Not working too hard today at the expense of current family events and stuff like that. So, I think there's a lot to be said about appreciating that journey, which it sounds like you're trying to focus on as well.
Yeah, I saw a pretty popular investor. I won't say his name. I'm not a huge fan of him, but he's pretty popular, so I won't mention the name. But he, he's built these businesses and stuff, and he's pretty famous on TikTok and stuff as well. But he's working 60 hours a week running these businesses that he's built to give him financial freedom. And it's in doing so, you've lost financial freedom. If you're still putting in this work, it's I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and that's the most important thing for me. And I don't see, this guy brags about not seeing his kids and how his kids will just be encouraged by seeing how hardworking their dad is. It's no, they're not. It's my kids are never impressed by the amount of money we have. They don't know what we have. They're never impressed by the things that we have. They're impressed by the time that I can spend with them and the things that I can do. This morning, it's the little things, right? I wake up, it's Wednesday, and instead of going and sitting down on a conference call at 9, where I used to have to do that every morning, I sit down for breakfast with my kids after I've gotten a workout in this morning and had some time with my wife and my kids and breakfast. And then afterwards, my 2-year-old son is, Daddy, can you play trains with me? And we sit down and we play trains for half an hour. And then it's like, we need to go get, a tire rotation done. Let's go in and do that today. So, I take a kid with me today and we homeschool. So my wife typically leads that, and she's teaching our daughters. So I take the younger one with me, and we go on a walk and go out for ice cream. This morning at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, and that for me, that's my goal. That was always my end goal, was to have my time to spend with my family, because that's something that money will never buy. So
I appreciate you. I really appreciate you saying that. And I think, that I know that resonates with me. I know it resonates with James. I know that's resonating with the listeners out there that, again, are not looking to make millions. It would be nice, but just looking to replace their income and get back their time. What would you tell that person that's listening right now or watching right now that hasn't gotten started, or I think James did a better job last week on talking about it. If you could go back to your younger self before you started investing, what piece of advice would you give yourself to propel you to get for this journey?
I feel like the biggest piece of advice that I could give anybody is to not focus so much on, climbing the corporate ladder as defining like your goals with your life in general, because especially as a dad, I think a lot of people have this misconception that you're supposed to be just the provider of the family, and they think that that's the financial provider. And I would say, yes, that's a part of it, right? That as a father and a husband, that you should be providing financially, but there's also providing spiritually, emotionally, and physically, with your time, with your actions, with everything else. And, don't focus so much on just climbing the corporate ladder and making these, excuses in your head of, oh, it's okay to put in the extra hours because I'm making this much more, and this much more money is going to help, support my family more and give them more freedom and flexibility to buy this and that, and live in this bigger house and drive these newer cars and whatever else, because that's not what's important. Your time is important with your kids and everything else. So whatever you do, real estate is a great tool, and it's been great for us. But whatever you do, make sure that your priorities are right before you even get going with this, because if they're not, and your mind's just on making money and that's all that's important, you are going to crash and burn and live a meaningless life. So I know that was really direct, but I wish that I knew that sooner, because it took a while for my mind to get there. So
I love that. I think people forget that real estate is a people business. It's all about people. Your tenants are your customers. Your Airbnb guests are your customers. Like, it is people, and those people have lives too, and they are choosing to rent from you somehow, some way, however you're doing the real estate game. And you've got to remember that at the end of the day, your numbers, your ROI, your return on your investment is directly correlated with actual people who have actual lives, and that things come up, and you need to be empathetic, and you need to remember that, we're all in this together. And if you just focus on the numbers and you just focus on the ROI, then you make sometimes, and majority of the time, morally bad decisions just to get ahead. And at the end of the day, you're not going to feel good about those,
No. Yeah, like this fourplex I was talking to you guys about. There's one of the tenants there is this the elderly guy, and he's lived in this fourplex longer than I have been alive on this earth. Like 35 years he's been there. So, when we took over the fourplex, we did not raise his rent. We raised the other three. He's about $200 a month under market rent, and we didn't touch his because there's something to be said about, just being, being kind and understanding people's situations too. I mean, we talked to him about it. And like we even just signed a new lease with him where he's at, because it's not worth it to me to kick this guy out, knowing that, he's called this place home for such a long time. So he asked one thing when we took it over as well. He's like, could I just get a new toilet installed? My toilet's been here since I moved in. He's like, I just want a new toilet. So we put a new toilet in his unit, and it's like, we're still making good money off the units there. And, and I don't need to touch his unit to do that, because it's, at the end of the day, it's not going to change my bottom line that much. So, but yeah, 100%.
Makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense. All right. Now I've got an idea on this next one, but what do you see as the biggest obstacle that you'll be facing, reaching for the stars and going after, building this Airbnb kind of mini empire that you're looking to keep going with? Like, what do you see the biggest hurdles over the next 24 months to help you get there?
I think the biggest hurdle for anybody, including myself, is financing. That's kind of the biggest drawback. A lot of people are scared about that too. But there's a lot of ways around it. It's never easy for anybody. So, small time investors who think, oh, like the bigger guys just, have deeper pockets and could just make this stuff happen and have these relationships. It's like, in some aspects, yeah, but like I've never wanted to do a joint venture. I don't want to do any syndications or anything like that. So, I know some people who that's all that they've done. They own so much, but they own so little because of it. And, they have become managers of companies instead again. And like I said, that was never our goal. So, it's harder to grow on your own. But yeah, financing is a big one. Finding ways to be creative. Like I explained earlier, we're doing a cash out refi on a property. This is where the BRRRR method comes in, which is great. To once you kind of get that pocket of capital, you can put it on a property, do your renovations, rent it out, refinance it later, and then repeat again and again and again, and just keep recycling that money. So I don't need to borrow it from somewhere except for just the loan on the property itself through my DSCR loans. But, some of that could slow us down, I suppose, but that's kind of, I think, the biggest obstacle for us right now is just to keep going with that. So, I've got a HELOC that I'm utilizing some of, so I'm getting this cash out refinance is going to help kind of pay some of that off too. So I don't recommend holding on to HELOCs too long. So it's a good safety net, security, extra income, down payment, money for, those great deals, but not for long term. But yeah, financing.
So
always.
Matt, I want you to do a little bit of bragging for us. So, at this point, we all know the difference between good debt, bad debt. How much debt do you got, man? How much debt's tied to your real estate? And like, what are you carrying on those shoulders of yours, lugging around as far as financing payments? So do a little bit of bragging for us.
It's funny because it's like everybody's just scared of debt. Like this is that Dave Ramsey, scared. You should never have debt. You should not have debt, or large amounts of it, for liabilities. It is great to have debt for cash flowing assets because my tenants are paying off these properties. So just to preface that, getting over the $1 million mark was a huge success victory for us. So we own $2.5 million worth of real estate. We have $1.2 million worth of debt on that, which has produced $1.3 million in equity. So
That's pretty awesome numbers. I'm not going to lie, for your 10 properties. So a little more than 100,000 a door, or 100,000 per property in
12 right now, but yeah, yep, exactly.
12
Yep,
properties.
yep.
Yeah. So about 100,000. I mean, that's really awesome. And
Yep.
then that is the biggest thing. Like, look, debt is good. Debt is how you accelerate money. Debt
Yep.
is the way to acquire assets that pay more than the debt on there.
Exactly.
So I think that's huge. That might be a question that we have to start asking more often, is what kind of debt are on their shoulders, man? I think that's good. We need to bump those
Yeah.
numbers up,
Yeah.
to hit that 2
Yeah.
million mark.
You get a lot of people are like, well, if you're in debt, then you don't own the properties and the bank does, and you've got nothing. It's like, well, it's because of the $1.2 million in debt. There's a lot of sweat equity in here, and putting money into these properties to renovate them as well as we lived in them and fix this stuff up and whatever else. But it's because of that debt that has also produced the 1.3 million in equity. And it's also produced a multi six-figure, net income that I only spend 2 to 3 hours a week managing. So call them my properties, call them the bank's properties. I don't care. At the end of the day, it's not going to, change the income that, and that it's brought in the equity. So,
Well, people seem to forget,
yeah.
when even when the note is paid off, okay, you still have property taxes, no matter what.
Mhm.
So it's never fully yours. It will never fully be
Yep.
insurance,
Yeah.
property taxes, water, all of
Yep.
that stuff. There's always going to be some sort of payment that you owe on that property, no matter what. So might as well, utilize debt to your fullest abilities.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that is great. And being able to, and the best part is you get to leverage that debt, quote unquote debt, to get more debt by
Exactly.
the equity that you
Yep.
have
Yep.
inside of those.
Yep.
What allows you to go and buy more.
Yep.
So
And
it's
I was just going to say, to all the people out there as well, people ask, well, if you have this cash flow, why don't you just pay off your properties, right? It's because I'm using that cash flow to purchase more properties because, in the long run, I would rather have 10 more properties with 10 more tenants paying me such and such each month and increasing my cash flow. And then they're paying off the properties as well. So, instead of me paying them off, I've got tenants paying it off. So, leverage debt to get more debt, to bring more income, to have more appreciation in your properties and build more wealth long term. So, yeah.
agreed. And I do think that sometimes people forget that your mindset changes on these things. Okay. As you're building up to hit those cash flow numbers, to hit those income numbers, you are in this long-term mindset of I'm going to acquire more, I'm going to leverage and get more. And then life events happen. Things change, and you decide, okay, maybe it's time for me to start paying some of these things off. Maybe
Yep.
my debt burden has gotten a little too high for my comfort
Yep.
or my
Yep.
spouse's comfort or the bank's comfort. And, as long as you can pivot and change, that's the great part about real estate.
Yeah.
You can pivot and change into anything. So I really think at some point, you might decide, hey, why don't I take these, four
Exactly.
Airbnb,
Yep.
bringing in these massive cash flow and go and start paying off my 10 long-term
Oh, yeah.
rentals.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now I'm quadrupling your cash flow
Yeah.
and calling it. So
Yep.
let's not forget one of the most important things is that majority of people change how they view their investing strategies, what's going on in the marketplace over time, and that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you're doing something,
Yep.
as long as you're doing something. So,
Yep. 100%.
all right. And with that, I think this is a perfect time to go right into the next part of the show that we call the Big Four. James,
Damn,
take yourself on
I was
mute.
muted, man. The big four delayed. All right, yeah, we keep the mistakes in. We're all good. All right, Matt. Tell us something that you've done in your life that's a financial independence hack or a cheat code that's really helped you propel your financial situation forward.
Oh man, financial independent hack. Utilizing creative financing. This was a huge one that really propelled us forward. A lot of people assume that you have to save 20% to get a property. That is not accurate. You just have to learn how to get that 20% from other stuff that you might have. You know, I understand not everybody owns a home, but if you do own a home, I guarantee, especially if you've owned it for more than a year, you've got equity in that property. Pull out a HELOC, do a home equity line of credit. That's what we did after owning a home for a couple of years and doing some renovations. And we pulled out $150,000. And that money we used to buy 5 more rental properties that are cash flowing us exponentially more than a HELOC payment will ever be. And that's helped, you know, just propel us so vastly quicker into, you know, financial freedom.
Love that.
That is
Be
a
creative.
great hack. And I would venture to say that majority of real estate investors have utilized their HELOC to help them continue to grow their business. So if you're listening out there and you've got equity in your house and you don't have a HELOC, why not? We call this one resources. Number 2, are there any particular books, podcasts, or people that have really shaped your investing journey, your financial independence journey? I know you did say Matt already, and we did have him on the podcast. So if you haven't already, go back and listen to his episode. But what do you got? Books, podcasts, people?
Yeah, Michael Elefante. He was
Mike.
he was a big one for me. Yeah, Michael was great. He kind of had some of the like similar starting points as I did. I think, you know, a lot of people make the mistake. I don't know. I don't have like a specific one because I've been thinking about this, and it's like, you know, I've listened to so many different podcasts, and it really wasn't like any specific one in general that I listened to back in the day. It was more like some of the people that came on it that I listened to. Don't make the mistake of only, you know, whatever you end up studying or listening to. For me, it was podcasts. I don't do books. I'm not a huge book guy. Get Paid for Your Pad was a book that I read that was helpful. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was also great, but I actually listened to that one. I didn't even read it because I used to drive a lot for work. So if you're driving, get Audible or you know, just listen to podcasts. But dive into that stuff. But the biggest thing that I encourage you to do is not focus on just listening to people that are like so far out there. You know, there's some of these guys, like I love listening to these guys, you know, Grant Cardone and Ryan Pineda and stuff, but like, you know, some of these guys I just feel like have lost such a touch with reality of what us, you know, quote, normal people, you know, are like, and it seems unattainable where they are, you know, where they make these comments of, don't start investing until you figured out how to make $250K a year. Yeah, one of these guys, you know, said that. It's like, I was making $35K a year when I started investing. So get grounded in some normal people. Michael was great. I put a bunch of stuff on TikTok. I don't do podcasts yet, but maybe to come someday. We'll see. But you know, even just digging into some of these simple guys. Zoe McGrath is great. She does like Airbnb unique stays. Zoe, if you hear this, don't get a big head. But she's been awesome. Who else? I'm trying to think of anybody else that was really inspirational to me when I started. The Real Estate Robinsons are fun. I went to one of their conferences. They were really enjoyable to listen to because they kind of started on a similar situation where Tony got let go of his job, and they've built a huge Airbnb or short-term rental portfolio. They do a lot more of like joint ventures and stuff, but they've really like they're great with utilizing you know, what I would call another form of creative financing or funding from other investors and creating those relationships. So, but yeah, find normal people. They are out there. We do exist, you know, that are not just living in the separate planet, you know, in our multi-million-dollar homes, driving our, you know, Bugattis and stuff. Like, you know, I drive a Pilot 2011 with 165,000 miles and I live in a house that I bought for 180K, and you know, and I found financial freedom, and you can too. So just, you know, find that. So
Great
that doesn't
piece of
really answer your
advice.
question directly, but you know,
It does.
hopefully.
No, I think that's perfect.
It does.
Get grounded with normal people. I think you know, that's fantastic advice. Use the resources that you have and aspire to be the things that you can actually aspire to be. So that's totally reasonable. Okay, Matt, for this next one, I want you to think about yourself 5 years in the future. You can do it on the personal side of things, on the business side of things. Like, where are you at 5 years from now?
Man, 5 years from now, to be honest, like, and I feel like we just keep, we've talked about this already as well. I'm pretty happy with where I am right now. And if I could be at the same spot, um, you know, being able to spend every day with my kids and see them grow and learn and get to know me, being there present with them in 5 years from now, that's where I'd love to be. If different real estate opportunities come up in that time, so be it, and I'd be grateful for that. But being a present dad and husband is what's important to me. I just got back yesterday from Omaha, Nebraska. I got home on Sunday with my wife, and we're like, sure. She mentions to me, I'd love to just go somewhere. Like, can we just go on a road trip? And I'm like, sure, let's just go to Omaha. And I had nothing going on that, I had no boss to ask, for permission to leave a job or, need to do anything. And I can just, we went to a little water park hotel and the Omaha Zoo and the Children's Museum and stuff. And if I can be doing this stuff 5 years from now, I would love that. And so that's my answer.
Well, Matt, not many people know this.
This
is a trick question, man. I mean, the people who can say, I want to be doing what I'm doing right now forever, those are the people who have won. And they get it, and they've got properly defined goals for themselves. So, it's always great when we ask this question. We have people like, expanding on where they are now, either unit count, money, lifestyle, business, employing people, whatever. But, fundamentally, I think a lot of the true winners are the people who have designed their life in a manner that's humble enough to say, like, I want to keep doing what I'm doing now because this is where life is at. So I think that's awesome.
Exactly. Now, the last one, the most important one, for those listeners out there that feel a little bit more knowledgeable, feel a little bit more inspired, and want to follow along in the journey, if this was their first interaction with you, where's the best place for them to reach out and connect?
Oh man, so I don't have the same brand that you guys do. I'm not like that special and popular. That's why I said I feel like I'm a little guy on this big show. But biggest thing for me, I started doing TikTok actually on a bet with my brother-in-law about 1.5 years ago that you could not monetize social media, and I proved him wrong. But no, I started doing a TikTok account, and I started taking it more seriously about 6 months ago. But I've got a little over 100,000 followers or so on there, and I post a couple of videos every day. But I'm just real and open and honest about what's going on in our life and different things. I give advice on Airbnbs, and I talk through, everything that we've done to get to this point. So my handle through TikTok, and I just started doing Instagram. It's not much anything yet. I don't put as much on there as I do TikTok, but rental cash flow. So just rental cash flow. That's it. And you will see this face right there. So with the rental cash flow logo in front of me. I even made a hoodie and a t-shirt with, I should have worn that today, but rental cash flow is how you can find me. So I do offer, I don't like sell any courses or anything that may come in the future if somebody really wants me to, but I do it because I enjoy it. I get paid off of video views, and that's enough for me. I do some paid partnerships here and there too, which I love to do. Those are fun. But I really just do it because I enjoy it. I offer a one-on-one video call. So if you want to do, I do Google Meet typically. I can do Zoom if you want to, but I do charge just a little bit for that to make it worth my time, and so I can know that you're serious about it. But we can talk for an hour, and I will answer any of your questions and give you as much advice and help as I can. But that's available through the link in my bio on TikTok and Instagram. So rental cash flow, and you will find me.
Love it. Love it. All right. You guys know the drill. If you like this podcast, if you hated this podcast, that's okay too. But do something and leave us a review. Send us a DM, Google, Apple, Spotify. If you haven't already, click that little star. Leave us a little review. Let everybody else know that you like this podcast, you like the guests, you like the content, because that's all we're working for. We're working for your likes. We're working for your comments. We're working for your reviews. And with that, we'll catch you next time. Peace.
See you guys.